Thanks, everybody. With Mr. Miles Mosley. His new record, Uprising, on Verve Records.
Absolutely.
It is amazing. It's so great to meet you, man.
Thank you.
I know so many of your friends.
Yeah, it's a big crew.
Let's talk about your friends. For folks who don't know, what is the West Coast Get Down?
The West Coast Get Down is a collective of musicians that were born and raised in Los Angeles, California. And we all grew up making music together because there were certain programs that were in place because we had Clinton in office, and so there was a lot of money going into the schools to, make sure that if a kid wanted to learn how to play music, there was an instrument and there was a teacher to assist them with that. And so we all sort of benefited from that great fortune. And I guess you could think of us as we were the top of our class, and so we were always put together in these honor groups and told that we sound good together and that we should continue working together. And so we did from the age of, I mean, some of us have known each other since we were 7, 13. Everybody knew everyone by the time they hit high school, and went to college together. And then everyone had their own careers. And we kind of got back together after touring with Lauryn Hill and Babyface, and I was out with Jonathan Davis of Korn and Snoop Dogg, and so everybody kind of went and learned how to be a great sideman, which is an important thing. And then I think, the tide turned, and we realized that if we wanted to do this forever, we had to kind of invest in ourselves and support each other and support one another and kind of believe in the community of musicians we had created. And so we decided to go into a studio and record everybody's songs, which ended up being 170 songs in 30 days. And Uprising is a batch of those songs.
So this was part of the whole epic thing with Kamasi? You guys went in the studio and made everybody's record.
Right. So we recorded all of that music. And I had started working on my record with Tony Austin, who's not only the drummer for the West Coast Get Down, but he's an engineer. He's kind of like our Danger Mouse. He knows all the technical information, and so we had him behind the boards, and so he was producer on this album. And yeah, while we were recording the epic, I have a very particular set of skills, which is these organizational efforts. I like organizing things. And so to take on a project that's massive like this, it was no problem for me to kind of build spreadsheets and boards and organize everybody's time to make sure that we could be the most productive possible and not waste any hours. So it wasn't your typical, hang out and shoot pool and, play basketball and wait for an inspiring idea. We were working from 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. every single day. And everybody was bringing something to the table beyond their musical abilities to make sure that the project ran smoothly.
Miles, you think about L.A. history. You think about Central Avenue in the old days with Dexter Gordon, all those folks. This may be the biggest jazz revolution in L.A. since the 40s, wouldn't you say?
That might be true. I think that it's rare that artists are able to share a common perspective on music and like get together and execute it at one moment in time and really put something into the coffers. And yeah, I think for jazz, this is certainly, and I think everybody has a different approach to the same thing, to what they think jazz is. And mine is more of a soul singer-songwriter kind of approach, and others come from
You guys are all over the place. I don't know if you know the members of the West Coast Get Down, but it ranges from Kamasi Washington, who's been a jazz savior, to Thundercat, who folks don't know what box to put him in. And
that's
then the
best box to be in, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of your box, man.
Yeah, I don't think we ever worried about whether or not what we were playing was jazz or not, and maybe that's what people hear, is that this really is a combination of influences, and because we're not trying to make sure that we tick a certain number of boxes to be accepted, we just wanted to make great music that felt honest to us and challenging to us. It's hard to categorize it. And so since Kamasi's record came out first and it did so well, and we all supported him and toured behind him like we were 16 years old or something.
Massive touring.
Massive touring. Because we really felt that if we could get one of our brothers up at the top, then that would allow us to, follow behind with a more of an awareness of what we were up to. But there's there's a massive difference between the sound of the Epic and the sound of Uprising, even though I think we share the fact that we both liked the idea of strings and choir. And
you just took my next question from me. The one thing that bonds you guys are those amazing string arrangements.
Yeah.
Whether it's over avant-garde jazz or the kind of funk you're bringing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Who's responsible for that?
Well, each of us did our own string and horn arranging, but you benefit from the fact that you're in the room with these guys who you trust and talk and learn about music together. So just as much as Kamasi benefits from my knowledge of string arrangements and really the nuances, up bows and down bows and slurs and, which instruments sound best in what configuration. I got that from him and Ryan on horns, and whether, switching a little harmony around or suggesting, that you try something from a different approach, or even just validating, yes, you did a good job on this horn arrangement. And so we were able to each express our ideas, and I love writing for strings. I love writing for horns. I think it's...
You're good at it, too.
Thank you.
And in fact, I want to talk about one of these songs, L.A. Won't Bring You Down.
Sure.
What's that about? You're L.A. through and through.
Yeah, being born and raised in Los Angeles, California, I felt like it's a city that has a lot of imported talent and people that come through and chase their dreams. And sometimes, as we know in the Get Down, it doesn't happen immediately. It takes time. And sometimes when you do get it, it's not exactly what you thought it was supposed to be. So all that means is that in Los Angeles, there's a lot of really beautiful people wearing very sad faces. And I felt a responsibility to my city to write a song that was like a get well soon, better luck next time, the Valentine's Day or something that said, hey, look, it's going to be fine. This city is fantastic, and you can get where you're going if you just kind of ease into it a little bit. And at that time, we were playing this wonderful residency in Hollywood, and so many people would be coming through and drinking and kind of airing it out a little bit, and we were playing, and so it felt like a good moment to write a song that could reach people and send them off on their next day feeling a little bit better about this world.
As a jazz lover, man, I can hear, and a former bass player, I didn't tell you that.
Yeah, you saved that for the last part.
I could tell where you're coming from as a bassist.
Yeah.
But as a songwriter, I can tell you love the English language, and as a singer. So who influenced you in those two areas?
As a songwriter, I definitely am influenced by the singer-songwriter tradition, the Joni Mitchell and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Dylan and Tom Waits and Otis Redding is kind of a bit of both. But to me, I've always gravitated towards songs that felt like a conversation. It felt like someone was just reaching out and speaking directly to you, and in that way could touch on an emotion that felt special, felt like you had a friend. And from a singing standpoint, I've really learned to become comfortable in that I'm always going to sound like Miles Mosley. But until I came to that, I was doing everything I could to sound like Otis Redding or Ray Charles or Nat King Cole, and those are such high bars to set. So, I'm so lucky to be able to play the bass the way that I do and string a few words together in a way that reaches people. That I've found that there's a character to my voice that actually is really conversational, and it really feels like someone's just kind of hanging out with you. And so I've just embraced that part of it.
There's also a character to your voice that says you are a soul man.
Yeah.
No matter how rocky you get, no matter, you got that soul through and through, without question.
Absolutely. I think soul music, it's definitely one of the approaches that we took in the production of the record, in that I didn't want to use a whole lot of studio trickery or, faking the overdubs or just things that are great tools for certain sounds. But if the record was going to be intimate, what if you just put the mics in the right place and put the voice right in front of your face and made it feel like people were performing for you in your living room, except there's 30 people in your living room. And, you know, when the choir comes in, it's this shouting, exalting feeling of I don't know, a community maybe. Like it feels like a bunch of friends hanging out in a room playing, but it's just a lot of them.
Your name, buddy. Let's go with that name.
I'm so glad I don't play trumpet.
You know, there's this singer who just won the Monk competition. Her name is Jasmia Horn. Oh, wow. And that is her given name, okay? Wow. Did your folks expect you to get in the music business? Were they in the music business? Were they lovers of Miles Davis?
Yeah, my mom loves Miles Davis and Yusef Lateef.
Wow.
And so I was going to be named one or the other. And I think my dad stepped out of the room for a second, and she got to pick, and so she went with Miles. But I'm the first musician directly in my family. I think my father's brother played piano, but I didn't receive any information or inspiration from him directly because he had passed before I was born. My parents didn't care what I did as long as I felt great about it and tried to be the best, whether it's delivering the mail or painting or music or building houses or, you know, working at a grocery store. As long as it brought you joy and you truly strived to be one of the best at it, that's where they felt was the easiest way to.
Well, when did the bass come in to bring you joy in your life?
At 13, kind of on accident, because I signed up for a comic book drawing class, and there weren't enough kids that were into that, I guess, and so they made me go to either art history or orchestra, and I didn't want to take any tests, so I went to orchestra. And after she played, the teacher, Miss West, played the violin and the viola, and she wasn't a very good player, so it was kind of squeaky, and I thought my mom's going to kill me if I bring that instrument home. And then she played the cello, and it was so beautiful. I was like, cool, that's what I want to play the cello. And she said, great, well, I'll assign you this instrument. You can walk it home and bring it back to school. I was like, oh, no. See, I'm in this for the easy grade. And I saw in the corner an upright bass, which is, you know, it's about 7 feet tall. And I said, what's that? She said, well, that's a double bass. I was like, dang, you got to take that home with you? No, she says, if you play the upright bass, you can just leave it here. And, you know, I was like, you have yourself one upright bass player. But I picked it up, and it's one of those instruments where you have to, you know, be so high to ride that ride. And I played one note, and it resonated, and I could feel my body shake, and I thought, wow, there's something special about this instrument. And when I learned that people hear music from the bottom up, it means that if the whole orchestra is playing this really sad A minor chord, and I put a C on the bottom, it becomes a really happy chord, and nobody can do anything about it. And if they're playing a ballad and I'm bored and I start playing a groove underneath it, it's a Bootsy Collins track and nobody can do anything about it. And it's at 15 to wield that kind of power that's addictive.
You're a rebel, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
That comes through in your music too, that you are a rebel. In your face kind of funk, pop, soul. I love it. And the first single from the record is called Abraham.
Yeah.
What's that song about, and why is that the first single?
Abraham is my first name, Abraham Miles Mosley. And for a while, I had known that I wanted to write a song that began, "You Can Call Me Abraham," because I think that's a really gangster thing to say to someone. And I more importantly recognized that to give someone permission to call you by your name, whatever that is you recognizing that you represent everything that came before you up until this moment in time, and you are always representing that and moving forward. So when you act a fool, you're acting a fool for all the generations that came, you know, to worked so hard to get you to where you are so that you could even make these kind of foolish mistakes. And so I wanted to write a song that felt like a reminder to me that to do right, to be a good dude, be a stand-up kind of cat, and derive energy from my ancestries.
You know, when you guys were recording the Epic, and man, that session is like going down in jazz lore, because it produced so much music. Kamasi's record, which was giant, was on Brain Feeder. But your record is on Verve.
Yeah.
How did that happen? I mean, the legacy of this label is incredible. How did that happen?
Well, I will say, being able to have that Verve coin on Uprising means a lot to me. Everybody knows that the legacy of that label has created some of the most important records in history, and some of the most influential records I've ever listened to were on that label. So while we were touring the Epic, it's the practice of the Get Down to share the wealth and spread it around. And so shows were going great, and people were coming to the performances. And in the middle of the show, either myself, Brandon, Ryan, or Cameron would perform, or Brandon, Ryan, or myself would play one of our songs, so that you could introduce people that knew Kamasi to some of the other members of the West Coast Get Down. And Danny Bennett and a couple of the cats.
Danny Bennett, the head of Verve.
Correct.
Okay.
Came to one of the shows and saw it and opened up a conversation with my longtime manager, Barbara, and it's kind of all in the history books from there. We had already released Abraham as a single, so it was out there and reaching people in their homes, and they felt like this was a good record to represent the direction they wanted to send Verve in. And when I got the news, I was like, hey, let's make it happen, because I feel like home.
Let's talk about the direction of Verve. I mean, from the beginning, Norman Grant started this great label with all those great beboppers.
Yeah.
Then in the 60s, they signed Frank Zappa, the Mothers of Invention, okay?
Yeah.
Which took them off into a different direction.
Right.
The people at Verve might be mad at me, but it's been kind of rudderless of late.
Mm.
Is this a new direction, not only for them, for you, but for them?
Well, I hope so. I mean, in that I hope that Uprising is a really popular record, and that they continue to support artists that think about music in the way that I do, which is that music is something for the people, and that I think anytime a label puts their belief into an artist, there's a responsibility on that artist's shoulders, especially when it has a legacy like Verve, to make music of a high caliber, but music that really galvanizes people and kind of makes them feel good about music again. And I know that every time I would flip through a stack of vinyl and see the Verve logo, I knew you had to get that record. It had to be like at least this good to even get that stamp. So if the idea is to make great music, then, Verve's up to it.
Speaking of folks having faith in you, it's an amazing story with your manager.
Yeah.
Barbara, we got to give her some love, man.
Absolutely. Look, I got some applause.
She has fans, too.
Yeah.
How long have you known her?
I've known my manager, Barbara Seeley, since I was 14, 15, something like that.
14, wow.
And her business partner, Bob Broadhead, they started a program to, the programs I was earlier alluding to, that you could take kids from different schools and congratulate them and give them different opportunities to perform and pursue music. Not some of them at-risk youth, and some of them just kids that couldn't afford certain instruments and whatnot. So they started these wonderful programs that lasted for the duration of while I was in high school. And I met them at that point and rekindled our relationship just after graduating from college. And she had just started her music management company, and I wanted to continue making music, and I think it's really important to do that with people you trust, both on stage and off stage.
Absolutely. And she's known members of the West Coast Get Down.
Every single one of them.
Since they were
Since
kids.
the same time, if not earlier.
That's amazing.
What's crazy is that it takes, a Brit to move out to Los Angeles to help a bunch of kids follow their dreams,
A Brit, she's from England.
Yeah. A woman from England moves to Los Angeles to help the West Coast Get Down follow and realize their dreams. It's a great story, and I've got to give props to Bob Broadhead, who's her business partner, but has been equal in our opportunities and really goes to bat for us, and sometimes gets left out. But it's at the end of the day, it's a team sport.
And we would be remiss in the little time I have left to even take it back further. I mean, I dug and talked to you guys, and you brought up the name Reggie Andrews, whose idea of this kind of thing was in 1974.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and that's, I think it goes to show how even though investing in education and investing in the community has a slow return, it's such a grand return when it finally happens. And there is no real quick fix for anything. But there are these true, community heroes that have helped kids get around getting into trouble and instead pursuing a dream that required an education and required them to stick together and understand what brotherhood is and understand what it is to be a man of integrity. And we were really lucky in the 90s to have a lot of people with that kind of foresight, and like you said, Reggie got that going in the 70s.
Look at the flower. The West Coast Get Down is the flower.
Absolutely.
Miles Mosley, everybody, please.
Thank you.
Questions from the audience, please.
Hi.
Hi.
So do you have any artists that you dream of, working with in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as far as new artists go, I think NAO is really good. I would love to work with Peter Gabriel. He's a huge influence of mine.
The hat is kind of Peter Gabriel.
Yeah, a little PG-ish, right? Yeah. I'm a huge fan of people who really focus on the songwriting and the words, and so those are two. I can start there. If I get those off my list, I'd be happy. Chance the Rapper, he's doing great stuff right now. Go ahead, brother.
Hi. Kind of a follow-up question to that. You've worked with so many different artists. Is there a particular collaboration that you've done that just really resonated with you? Somebody that you've worked with that was just life-changing?
Well, I mean, it's a good time to point out or bring to light what I received from working with Chris Cornell, because I got the call. Half of me is this jazz classical training, and the other half is this grunge-loving kid that grew up, in the 90s in L.A. And I got to work on a record of his called Carry On. And during those sessions, because I was so geeked out by the fact that I got to spend time with this guy, who's a phenomenal songwriter, he's told me the story of how things sort of unfolded in Seattle, and that really what it came down to was one band got an opportunity, and instead of taking that opportunity and keeping it close to the chest and not sharing it, they turned on the record companies to the band down the street that was great.
Nirvana? Was that the one band?
Well, you have, I think, Jane's Addiction kind of was the first band, and then when they signed Jane's Addiction, they say, well, if you like us, you should check out Soundgarden. Soundgarden passes it on to the next friend's band. So I saw a similarity in that and the opportunity I had with the West Coast Get Down. So that changed my life. Working with Miss Lauryn Hill was a big one, too.
Hi, Miles. I know you just had a concert in Brooklyn a couple days ago. I wanted to know if there was a difference between playing in a city like New York compared to a city like New Orleans, where jazz really originated.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the venue you're in, but I think I understand the question. And each city has a culture of listening to music. And some believe that audience participation helps boost the experience, and others come at it from sort of receiving something from the stage. So there's absolutely a difference in every single city. And some of it's because of the traditions of that city, and some of it is because, if you think of playing shows in Europe, I think they kind of go for the sport of going to a show and want to help you put on the best show possible. Whereas, I come out here from Los Angeles to do a show in New York, and I know that I have to put a little bit extra in there and make sure that, I can make this community feel comfortable chanting West Coast Get Down when they're in Brooklyn. Yeah, exactly. But if you do it right and you do it from an honest place, it can work out.
Hey, man, you were on the Terrence Howard record. Now,
Yeah.
This is a really silly question.
Okay.
Is he more Hustle and Flow or Crash or Empire when you worked with him?
Ooh, Hustling for a Crash or Empire?
Good question, right?
I think he's more Empire.
He's more Empire.
Yeah. He loves writing songs, and he loves singing, and has a very very charming voice, actually. Yeah, that was a really interesting experience. He was open to doing so many different things and lots of different instrumentation. So I did a lot of arranging and for strings and flutes and all kinds. He liked a sort of a loving fantasy world that we created there.
Man, your album reminds me of this fantasy world. I mean, there's so much to this, man. Congratulations.
Thank you.
On Uprising. Miles Mosley, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming out. I appreciate it. Thank you, brother.